What's up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome to another Digital Chumps video review, this time for Ghostwire Tokyo. Of course, I am Alex Tudor. I haven't played this game. Ben Sheen is our reviewer. You can actually go read his review right now over at DigitalChumps.com. Ben, kick it off here. What's up?
Yeah.
Oh, Nathan.
Oh,
Nathan's here too. He's also played it.
yeah. Me and Nathan, me and Nathan have played it, and yeah, I'm the one taking the lead on it, but I know Nathan's dumped a lot of time in it. So, and Alex, I just thought it would be fun to have you, maybe if you had any thoughts on the games, any curiosities to ask and bring it up.
I have a lot
But
of curiosity.
as as you should, I think that's kind of what a lot of people might have. Even this game got revealed in 2019, and we've only had a handful of gameplay reveals for it, and I still think it's pretty elusive. But main things to note: it is a open world game, and not like, hey, Tokyo's a big city. This is sort of like a full fledged Assassin's Creed, like Skyrim kind of thing. There's side quests, collectibles, tall buildings to collect souls off of with Japanese paper dolls. It's a super bizarre game, but I've had a lot of fun with it, and I played it for almost 30 hours, which I did not expect to do. After for the preview I wrote last week, I dumped about 10 hours into it, getting through the 2 chapters of the game, and I was shocked at its length. It's a girthy game, and there's a lot to do. Nathan, what do you think about it?
Yeah.
I think I just want to echo your sentiments. Huge game, and it does have a Skyrim Assassin's Creed feel to it. A lot of things to do, a lot of things to discover. Just a little bit of repetitiveness here and there, but that's to be expected. And it is a slow, progressive open world game, meaning that you're going to have to unlock a lot of areas and do things in order of operation sometimes to get it to really open up. But it has been a blast. I've got about 15 to 20 hours right now in it.
So around 30 hours is what it would take to complete.
Yeah, I would say that's. I didn't do so when I finished. I did not complete every side quest. I've probably got like 10 or so left. I didn't do the entire skill tree. I could see, and I also, for the record, played on hard, which I don't think buffered my playtime by that much. I probably died more than I would have in any other situation. But I could see like 100%ing this game taking about 40 to 50 hours, mostly because there's a specific like collectible that would take a long time to scour through. You basically have to scour every inch of the map for it. It's like those flags in the first Assassin's Creed.
Okay. Yeah, those were
Yeah.
annoying. Those were
Yeah.
annoying. Well, that's good because my biggest question was, with all of these other games coming out right now, Elden Ring, Horizon, all of these big open world games, how does this kind of fit in terms of its open world? There's been a lot of criticism of the Ubisoft style open world map with like icons splattered all over the place. Talk to me about that. Like what is the exploration like? The open world like? What is all that about?
So exploration in this game is, for the most part, a lot similar to any normal like first person open world game, minus the fact that there's a lot of verticality in it. It's in the streets of Tokyo, so it's a little bit different than, you're not going to come up on a hillside and see mountains in the distance or anything. These are sort of claustrophobic, busy streets. There's a lot of back alleys, small little like ponds and grave sites and construction buildings. But most of that's done by just running around, clicking L3 to run, pressing X to jump, and then pretty soon into the game, you have the ability to grapple onto these tengu, which are like flying Japanese folklore ghost bird things, and you can also glide for a number of seconds along the rooftops because you are possessed by a spectral detective named KK, which maybe we'll get to that in a little bit. But the game has sort of the ground level, and then it has the the skyscraper level where you can literally fly around the rooftops and search for items, and some missions are done on the tops of buildings. It's really strange, and a thing that I don't think they've really talked about that much, which I was kind of surprised about how much shit there is to do, like at the top of the map.
Mm. Mm. Nathan,
No
what?
cars
Oh,
or anything like that either.
Nathan, your thoughts on the exploration and the
It
open world nature of it?
it's really nice. I think at the beginning it's going to feel very linear,
Mm.
and then once you start like opening up shrines and you start really exploring buildings around you, because there's like some open centers where there's escalators that just kind of go on and on and on for a while, and elevators that you can find that aren't detailed on the map immediately, and then you go up on these levels. Like there was one where I went 24 floors up and got out and fought some things, and then got on the rooftop, and I was like, "Ooh, I could just glide from here." Um, so there's as Ben said, it's very claustrophobic on the ground
Mm.
because you go always watching out for enemies. You're taking your time, but there's a lot of freedom to going up top, and it kind of opens up everything. And I mean, it does feel like a good game that's really quite open, probably by midway,
Okay.
and you can just see where it's going.
Okay.
Yeah, and this is also like a game where you might want to go to the top of a massive skyscraper and can't figure out how to get there. And one of the easiest solutions is to literally find a staircase on the side of the building and walk up 8 or 10 flights of stairs. Like, imagine sort of like a snake eater moment where Snake climbs up the ladder, but just not. It's super strange.
So it sounds like the traversal through the open world is a little bit. How to talk to me about that? Like
I
what?
can't I
You
can't
know?
say that it's bad. Like I never once was like, I just wish this was easier. I think later or as early as you want in the game, you can purchase a power that makes you summon these uh Tengu anywhere, or at least on any sort of normal surface. So if you want to do that, I didn't unlock it until probably like 20 hours into the game. But because it's set in Tokyo and that's such a populated, busy city, there's so many buildings, so like the streets are small. They use a lot. They use a lot with the real estate. There's discoveries like you can make literally between two buildings that you kind of have to like find the entrance towards. It's meant to be. I think you're meant to try and like soak it up as much as possible, and not really in like an annoying way. One thing that I really enjoyed about it is if you kill enemies like in the main map, they don't come back, so you're not constantly running into battles just by trying to explore. You're it is like a lot of like box mark or like check boxing. You know, you're gonna like find something, you're gonna kill enemies, and you don't have to worry about that stuff anymore. So you can kind of run around and do what you want. And there's just stuff everywhere.
Yeah.
If it's not if it's not like a collectible, it's a small little battle, or it's a new mission or something like that, or a shrine to worship at.
Mm. Okay. Okay.
I think I think what a lot of people are gonna notice about this game is that it is kind of more in line with like those early like PS3, Xbox 360 open worlds where they kind of started getting a feel for how those things worked.
Mm.
And I think a lot of people are going to see Ghostwire Tokyo as maybe dated in that sense,
Okay.
but I feel with the way that the game presents its powers, its weird, you know, its weird story, like its supernatural elements, it's all different in a sense. Like you're not in any other game doing what you're doing in here, and especially through first person. I think if this was a third person game, you'd lose a lot of that immersion. Even
Mhm.
though this isn't an immersive sim, it's it's kind of like that in a way.
Okay. Okay. So tell me a little bit more about the story then, because you mentioned that it's weird, and I think that will probably give me a better sense of kind of what the game is overall, because everything that I hear from the gameplay sounds like it's a mix of Dying Light, mix of old Assassin's Creed.
Yeah.
I'm kind of getting that vibe, but what about the story? Because obviously Shinji Mikami worked on this game. Is
hmm
he the director of this game?
He's not. He's
Okay.
I think a producer of it.
Right. So he worked on the game
hmm
in some sort of capacity, but are his influences felt? Like, what's the story all about?
So I described this to Nathan when I first started playing it as sort of like an action thriller. It is not a horror game, though there are horror elements in it, mostly stemming from the supernatural stuff. It starts out where you are this spectral guy named KK. You don't know anything about him unless you've played the prequel, like visual novel that Bethesda made available right before previews went up. I haven't touched it. Apparently, like I want to, but I kind of wanted to just go off the story based on this game. But anyways, he possesses a 22-year-old Japanese guy named Akito who has gotten severely wounded in a car wreck. You don't see the car wreck, you just literally see the camera floating around Tokyo on the streets and then zooming into this guy laying possibly dead on the streets. And suddenly a fog envelops Tokyo and people just disappear. It's not like they just get kind of raptured or happening out of their clothes are on the ground. The streets are just littered with empty cars. The only like living things on the streets are dogs and cats. And Akito is trying to find his sister who is in the hospital after a mysterious accident involving fire. KK is trying to find this guy in a Hanya mask who is trying to prepare a ritual that involves everyone in Japan disappearing. There's a red moon in the sky. And from there, you're just like trying to figure all this out. And it's part like ghost busting detective work, part weird cult thing. But more than anything, this game is kind of like it emphasizes Tokyo. It is a Japanese cultural piece in the same vein as Persona, Yakuza, more along the lines of Neo because I had a lot of, well, I guess Neo and Persona because they delve a lot into the supernatural. But this is a very, very Japanese game. You are learning about yokai, uh, Hori gates and everything. There is a massive like everything that you collect, everything that you see has an entry in like a glossary that you can read about, and it is thick with cultural references, and it's actually kind of that's I think the most appealing part about the story for me.
Just kind of how it builds out in Japanese culture and
Yes.
works within that culture. That's really cool. That's really cool. Nathan, what are your thoughts on the story? You said 15 to 20 hours in.
Yeah, so far so good, and I'm right with Ben. There's a lot of cultural and mythology behind this game that is probably well known in Japan, and yeah, I didn't even know the I didn't even know the yokai, which are portrayed as cats, who are like in traditional Japanese robes, who mainly are at convenience stores and sell things to you.
Right.
I didn't know that was a
Yeah.
thing. So it was neat seeing all these like neat Japanese cultural things pop up, and I understood what the Shinto shrines were, and like those are play a heavy part in opening up maps in it. But I enjoyed that part of the game a lot, just learning a little bit more about Japanese mythology and the characters that they put in the game and how they worked with the story that Ben described. That was well done. I enjoyed that quite a bit.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, I mean, it sounds really cool. What the aspect that really caught my attention was like the ghost busting aspect. So, what are you doing in this game? Like obviously, we've talked about the exploration and everything, but like what is the combat all about? Like what is the moment to moment, you know, going from story beat to story beat, like what are you doing in between?
Yeah, so it's gameplay wise, this is basically a first person shooter.
Sure.
It is you are using your hands as guns, and I think the joke of finger guns is apt. You have three uh, powers. It's a wind blast, a water blast, and a fire blast, basically. And then you also get a bow and some talismans. Just quickly, I will say I was disappointed that I thought the game was going to show off like maybe like an earth bending move or something like that. Maybe a heart power, get the whole Captain Planet in there. But basically, you start out the game with a wind blast, which is sort of like your everyday gun. It fires rapidly, does a medium amount of damage. You have a wind or a water power that's like a shotgun spread that does a lot of damage up close, and then a fire attack that can like pierce through enemies, or you can, and all three of these attacks you can charge up to do different things with.
Mm-hmm.
You're using these powers to attack visitors, which are also very culturally rooted in like Japanese folklore. There's these slender man looking things carrying umbrellas that are, these spirits of people that work themselves to death, or like headless school children that encapsulate the rage of schoolboys and girls that live their life. There's crazy women wearing trench coats with massive scissors. It's so weird and so bizarre, but you are fighting these enemies with your ethereal weaving powers. You're blasting them with the wind. They'll block you with your umbrella. They do long range attacks. They pick up things and throw them. And as you beat these enemies down, this orange core inside of them starts to grow, and you can see it. And eventually, Akito and Keihei are capable of ripping out the core, which instantly kills the enemy. Can reward you with some ammo or some health, and it's and I noted this in my preview. It's literally one of the most satisfying things in a game that I've played in years. It's like he basically takes, I think, what is actually the Ghostwire. You see this like string fire out, attach itself to the core of the enemy, and he like folds his fingers and like pulls it, and then just like snaps it, and it explodes. And there's a lot of this really flashy, stylish use of katakana and kanji. Like when it rains, letters fall in front of you. Like I don't know what they say, but that's what the raindrops are. Literally Japanese characters. It's a very very stylish game, and I was really surprised at how simple the combat is. And despite the fact I don't think they could have gone a lot farther with it, it's still really really fun to kill things and sneak around and just get in fights.
Right. Right. Nathan, what are your thoughts?
I really enjoyed the different characters and what they brought, like the different enemies. So he mentioned the Slenderman and the trench coats were the worst, I think,
Yeah.
because what they would do is if they saw you, they would shout really loud and set off an alarm, and like all these other things would show up. So and there's some really creepy shit out there. There's like the long-haired, long-armed thing that will just rapidly run at you. And I don't know
It
what that
floats
is.
for a little while and then
Yeah,
yeah.
so it's just unnerving. And no matter how many times I saw that thing, I didn't want to ever get near it.
Yeah.
But the weaponry that Ben mentioned, like especially the fire probably was the most powerful out of the bunch,
Hmm.
and that was good for long range and taking care of things like that. Um, but my God, some of the stuff that they brought into that game was just unnerving. Some of the bosses, especially, were just creepy as hell. And like 15 hours in, I still wasn't comfortable like sneaking up on things or or alarming too many things.
You
It
got a
was
few that you'll see that are even worse, I
yeah,
think.
thank God. I can't wait to see those.
Yeah.
But some of that stuff scared the shit out of me. I mean, I'd never jumped on a video game before, outside of like Resident Evil, whatever. When the things come through the wall, I forgot. Maybe it was two or three, but
It's all of them.
but it's all yes, it's all of them. But anyway, yes. I mean, like combat system was appropriate. It was neat, and as Ben was mentioning, it was very gratifying taking kind of like that crystal out of the enemies and just pulling it out. That never got old.
Mm-hmm.
So
It sounds very Doom Eternal, where
mhm.
you're kind
I
of
mean,
ripping out things
yeah.
from your enemies. Yeah,
It kind of
and
is
that
because
satisfying feeling of it. Yeah.
yeah. Just the visual of it, the sound, it's like this crunchy explosion that happens. It's I think that is the one of the highest bars that this game sets, is that it just has a great sense of style.
Mm.
Mhm.
Um, I think what falters for me is that it doesn't go far enough, and I think there could be more enemies. I think the mission variety could be a little greater, because what I think Nathan ran into and what I ran into a lot is that when you deviate from the main story, you'll do a lot of side missions that are kind of where the ghost busting thing comes in. So every soul in Tokyo is gone, but you still see their little spectral like wispies around, and you can talk to these people, and they will give you side missions. They basically can't move on until you help them with something, and they will it's basically, hey, this is the thing that I need. One mission was like, I want to go use the bathroom, this public bathroom, and I can't because there's someone in the toilets right now. And you go to the toilets, and he's like, hey, I need toilet paper. So you literally go to the men's and women's bathroom, collect a piece of toilet paper, and give it to this spirit. They leave. The mission's completed. You get money. You get like your little collectible spirits, and that's the mission. Then you might go into a bathhouse where they're like
Okay.
something bad is happening, and you go through a door, and it teleports you to this weird, like otherworldly place, which is literally just covered in water with some debris around, and you just do a enemy arena. And a lot of missions are basically that. It's like here's a weird, quirky Japanese slice of life thing, whether it's involving cherry blossoms or hoarders or like a weird work life situation, and you've got to dispel a evil spirit or kill a bunch of visitors, and it doesn't change much from that. You get your variety from the main missions, and I think that's what I would have liked to have seen a lot more of, is just this really weird shit going on in the side quests. But instead it's like almost like reading like a very short story of like a quirky tale, which I think that's what they were going for.
Right. So it's just little side things that kind of build out the world to make it feel a
Yeah.
little bit like adds to the mystery of what's going on, right?
Yes.
Hmm.
Because the other thing about that is that the side missions aren't inherently rewarding. Not like in a bad way. It's just that most of the time, what they will reward is money, which you can use to buy food that heals you, and you eat Japanese food that heals you and raises your contributes to your max HP every time you eat something, which I thought is really interesting mechanic. So you can sit there and grind out your max health by intentionally taking damage and eating, or you'll get these what are called spirits, and it's the spirits of all the people that have been disappeared from Tokyo. And in the game, there's 240,000 of them. And that doesn't mean there's literally 240,000 individual things to collect, but you will go and find these blobs of people floating on rooftops in the alleyways or as rewards from like doing anything, and you soak them up in this little item, and you go to a payphone and you deposit them, and you get money and you get experience points, which are then used to unlock upgrades. But yeah, you really get like upgrade materials and stuff just by doing silly things like chasing down a ghost that's flying through the air, or putting a cucumber on a pedestal and waiting for this little frog like Kappa to spend 2 minutes circling around, and you're trying to hide from it so you can sneak up behind it and steal its soul.
Okay.
It's so, but and that's the thing. It's like saying it out loud. It doesn't make a damn bit of sense. But
Yeah,
like,
yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. I'm like, I have no
yeah,
idea of what. Yeah, but okay.
but when you play it, it makes sense, and you see what they're doing. Like some of these things like feel dated, and that there are these repetitive tasks that you do once. You're like, oh, okay, I get it, and then you have to do it multiple times throughout the world, and you're like, eh. But it's quirky enough and has a weird enough personality to it that I think you mind it a lot less, because it's not some weird, like, I guess like a Ubisoft game or even something like Horizon. It's typical open world, but
Quirky.
not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What was the long neck thing that you had to chase down the street? There was something
Oh
with like a long neck that would just curl around buildings.
my god, I don't, because
Have you not seen that yet?
I remember there was the ferret that flew through the air
Nope.
that you had to chase. There was the umbrella thing.
Yeah, no, this one is actually a creature that will show up, and it's just a long neck, and it's peeking around a corner. and you have to run after it and then have to follow it. It's really creepy.
How did I miss this? I don't know what you're talking about.
Oh
So
my god, you gotta go find it then. It's a side quest.
that's so strange.
It's so
Okay.
unnerving too, because it's just like the ring girl has a long neck, and it's just like, oh
That
my
sounds
god,
terrifying.
it's
Yeah.
really terrifying.
That sounds terrifying. Well, guys, this game sounds awesome. But let's go ahead to wrap this up. Let's get some final thoughts. Nathan, we'll start with you.
Cool.
Since Ben reviewed the game, but Nathan, what are your final thoughts on Ghostwire Tokyo?
I think it's unnerving and beautiful. I think it's probably one of the neatest PS5 games that I've played
Okay.
in probably the last year and a half. It's very unique. Just having the creatures, the kind of the mythology there, and just the story structure itself is just unique. But I mean, that's what you expect from the studio that brought you Evil Within and Evil Within 2. Um, I do think it's repetitive. I do want to echo the sentiments of Ben, where I think that I wish there were more enemies and there were just a little bit more variety. But as it stands, once you get started on this, you will not want to particularly stop, and you won't get particularly bored with it. There's enough to do, and it's a big area. So, great game, in my opinion.
Cool. Ben, you reviewed it for DigitalChumps.com. Are we allowed to say what you're giving it right now, or
Not yet.
not yet? Oh, so hold on. Is this just a what? When is this video going up?
This video is going up. We're speaking to this feature probably sometime tomorrow, I assume, if we upload it then.
Okay.
Because I'm still like a little bit conflicted on it because what Nathan said at the end there is really important that you don't really want to put it down, and that could be just me and him because I know that we both really like open world games.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's interesting that Ghostwire Tokyo has come out. Uh, Basically, I think Dying Light 2 and Tokyo Ghostwire are bookends to Horizon and Elden Ring. Two sort of very atypical open world games that I think people will love for what they do. Like people will love Dying Light because it's just this massive game with gameplay, parkour, zombies, lots of collectibles and things to do. But then you have massive big budget Horizon. And then you have Elden Ring, which is like this Breath of the Wild kind of open-ended adventure, whatever. Ghostwire, it is like this dated open world game that borrows a lot from the past couple decades, but I never really got bored or frustrated in my time with the game because it is so different and so unique. And I think that's what I'm kind of grappling with at the moment is it could have been a weirder game. Like I've played Evil Within 1 and I've seen Evil Within 2, and I know those are like Shinji Mikami directed games, so they lean more towards horror. And this one isn't trying to do that. It's first person perspective, it's immense style, its devotion to like telling a Japanese story is really unique, and that's what I kept finding myself fascinated with. Like I would stop and like browse the menus, like read up on the things that I saw because I actually cared and because I was interested in it. Like it's got incredible voice acting and the graphics can be a little weird, but I mean this is like a game, this is an open world game where you're in one city, it's always nighttime, sometimes it rains, it's bleak and weird, you don't interact with like a single living NPC. The story doesn't always make sense, and it doesn't answer like it doesn't even try to answer all the questions it presents. But it's like really confident in that. And as I rolled credits on the game, like I thought, like you beat the game, the story ends, and I was like, wait, so you're not gonna like tell me these things that like I've been curious about the whole time? You're not gonna reveal who's behind the certain
That's
things
all in the
and
side quests.
it's not though. That's the thing. Like the side quests are almost completely separate from it. But like even despite all that, it seems like it understands that those are questions that players would have. Maybe people don't want to be like led around, but like you can turn off every icon on the map and things like that, and it just wants you to sort of soak up this city. And the story is kind of supplemental, but like it's really heartfelt. especially near the end. Like the two main characters, you're playing as a guy who's possessed by a ghost cop, and they kind of butt heads and then grow a friendship that you might not notice unless you've been paying attention to like the way that they talk to each other. And like those things are given a lot of care. And I don't know, I just can't find myself not enjoying this game, but I can see where some people would just grow tired of it or would just main path it and be done with it in 10 to 15 hours. But I think if you do that, you lose a lot of the charm it has.
Well, it sounds like a very interesting game. I
Yes.
eventually want to give it a shot because it's just weird enough that I don't think you can get a really good understanding of what the game is trying to do unless you play it for yourself. Would you all agree?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it's one of those games that I got to give a shot. I imagine a lot of people are going to just have that curiosity to give the game a shot. But that being said, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us again for another Digital Chumps video review. I think it's a review. Ben didn't give us a score. So we're going to leave you up right here. Go check out Ben's review over at DigitalChumps.com once he decides what that score is. And then you can go see what he says about the game. Of course, I've been Alex Tudor, the reviewer Ben Sheen, and Nathan Stevens. Everybody, thank you for joining us. We'll see you next time.